Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is Rogue State. $12.99 came out on the Steam store about a week or two ago. I would tell you the exact date it came out, except for the fact that Comcast is being a dick right now. And Comcast is always a dick, but in particular, they're being a huge dick right now. Now, this was developed by Little Red Dog Games, as well as published by Black Shell Media. Before I begin looking at this geopolitical simulator, want to make sure you guys know that this key was obtained from the publisher for the purposes of review. That won't affect my opinions, but you should know via FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? But let's take a look at what Rogue State has to offer. You play as a new regime that has come into power after the old regime has been toppled at this point. You are now the sort of transitional government at this point. Now, as you immediately see, there's a lot on screen. There's a lot of information. That can be a little bit problematic for some people. It's just like, whoa, you know, why are all these menus? This is a simulator game, and it's a detailed one, although if you look at all these menus, about half of them won't make a difference on every turn, or even every 7 turns, for example. So, let's first go into what the gameplay is like. So, at the bottom here, you see a bunch of information. Here's my treasury with the amount of gold that I have in my current bank right now, as well as how much I expect to make a turn. This is my military faction's sort of loyalty at this point. Mine is high at this point, and it'll gain a lot per turn at this point. So that's good. The military won't have a coup d'etat on me anytime soon. Now, your people are made up of a bunch of different groups. You've got the patriots, you've got the capitalists, you've got the fundamentalists, and the liberals. They all play a specific part, and in particular, you need to have policies that don't necessarily all go to one group, but you'll have to balance between the groups in question about what policies that you implement, because it's very important. Is one group, you know, decides that they don't like you anymore, they may cause a riot. That's going to cause you a lot of problems. Even if you have things like riot police and things like that, that's not something you want to do. You also have this is your overall popularity with the people. I'm doing pretty well for my first term at this point, so you know, 73%, not bad. I wish our president had a 73% approval rating right now. It's not that high, that's for sure. But let's take a look at what I can do per turn. Now, first, I can do a lot of things every turn, although some of them is more informational purposes. Let's take a look at the factions portion. Let's look at the policies. Now, as a president, I am deciding what the policies that I want to uphold the country with. And that's going to make a difference on how the groups perceive me. So for example, I can allow the death penalty. At this point, I say, okay, no, life imprisonment. I don't want the death penalty at all. But if I change that to say, yeah, I do, you'll notice that the approval rating changes. The patriots are like, yes, thank you. You know, we want the death penalty. While the liberals are like, no, what the hell are you doing? So each policy can have a direct effect on your approval rating. Now, some of them don't have necessarily a direct correlation on your approval rating. The Disaster Relief Fund, for example. I can up this, but it's not changing anything besides the amount of money I'm spending per turn. But obviously, it does make a difference in the long run. If I do have a crisis, I will have more money in the pool at this point. But on the flip side, you also do get a little bit of approval that's unseen, like by the liberals, for example, because they want to see more like social programs and things like that. So not every item is necessarily a direct causation in terms of, oh, I go to free trade. Obviously, the capitalists want free trade, so of course saying no free trade is going to hurt them. But some of them will have other effects. Like, for example, the police. If I don't have a good police system, you know, people are going to riot at this point. So a lot of policies that you have to deal with. I will say that it does seem a little bit problematic the way that they've implemented it in terms of a realistic element to it, because I can go from death penalty to no death penalty with just barely any effect on it, and I can go back and forth depending on the time. I feel like there just needs to be a time-based element to it, but I can understand why they simplified it for this purpose. So, those are the policies. Now, let's take a look at the politics portion in terms of, well, let's look at the parliament. Your parliament you need behind you in order to pass laws and things like that. So I need to make sure that I keep these people happy. So right now, parliament likes me. The green is people who are supporting me. Red would be disloyal. This is my brother, who's obviously going to try to overturn me at this point. But we'll deal with that as it comes. So I've got, huge people, or a huge amount of people in the parliament. I do have advisors. For example, my capitalist advisor for my communications. He boosts my factions +1 per turn. You'll also notice this. Well, what is this? Every so often, you will have a advisor come up to you and say, hey, look, we need your help on something. If you help them, you will get a bonus. So, for example, if I click on this, I will get a 15 plus approval for capitalist right away. And so it's a little bit of bonus to help them out. On the flip side, if I don't help them out, they'll be a little bit disloyal, as you see this -1 modifier here for this guy. So you want to keep them happy, but you have to realize that sometimes you won't be able to do what they ask of you. So, for example, last turn, I was able to lower the tax rate, and that's what earned me a favor. Thoradin was disappointed that I ignored his request. His request was to get the President of the United States over to the country on turn 12. Sometimes that balance in terms of what they ask you doesn't make sense for the time in question. Like asking you to build the Great Firewall, which is the equivalent of a civilization wonder within the first 20 turns. That's really, really hard to do. And they'll ask some ridiculous things of you, and you'll have to handle it at that point. I will say that it's nice to see that your choices matter in this game. Every choice that you make in terms of buildings, in terms of, policies, they seem to have an effect on the game. And that's good, especially in a simulator like this. Sometimes it's hard to see, but you'll notice that you'll have to do something in order to, move on at this point. Now, let's talk about the foreign aspect. You can call up foreign leaders and get their approval of things. Yes, that is a chicken. I will talk about the chicken in a little bit, but let's call Kaloshara here, the president Aranovos, and talk to him. Because there's two things we can do with him. First, we can discuss issues, and second, we can trade. Discussing issues will affect your approval rating with them. So, for example, we must work together to counter extremism both within and outside of our borders. We share your deep concern. Okay, so this is a positive response from him, so most likely my approval rating will go up with him. You can get to a point where you have such a low approval rating that they will actually attack you, and you'll have to deal with them militarily. So keep that in mind. You want to keep them happy most of the time, but you will have times where it's like, okay, enough with you. You're asking for too much. You can also trade. So, for example, I get asked to get garments from them or electronics or, sell them some of my exports at this point. They show you exactly what it looks like. Garments have been, steadily rising. I should have gotten that earlier on. And it will cost me an amount per turn to get those imports and exports. Why would I want imports?
Apologies.
Why not just, focus on my country? Well, you have resources, and resources will give you certain benefits. For example, I right now have goats, I have electronics, and I have media. I'm actually importing media from a country. That actually affects my liberal approval rating. And they're saying, oh, hey, cool, you're, giving us more media. I really like that. So certain combinations can really help you. For example, if I really need fundamentalist support, maybe I try to go and trade for spice. And see, I already have the goats, so hey, guess what? That's going to help me. Now, I export as well for an amount per turn. So keep that in mind. You have to sort of balance, like, okay, I can make some money that way, but I also have to pay some money to get some of these benefits. Maybe I just go for money and focus on not even dealing with the approval. Or maybe I, focus on these guys because of the sweatshop bonuses. Again, very complicated in a sort of simplistic way. Again, it's not a horribly detailed explanation about, like, okay, there's simple amount of items, there's simple amount of choices that you can make, but on the flip side, it's gonna hurt you over time, because unfortunately that's what the amount of choices that you have And even though there is a good amount of different combinations, you'll be making the same choices over and over again over, a period of time. Now, of course, if things go south, you will have the Situation Room, which is basically your war room. You can redeploy troops, you can even make, tanks and, build up your army. You can even get a nuke at one point, which, of course, unfortunately, because of the obviously Middle Eastern, what's the word I'm looking for, focus of this game, obviously there's nukes involved because, well, nukes. So, yeah, a little bit of a different story there. I like the game's ability to make you pay attention to factors. I like the fact that you have to pay attention to almost everything in order to be very successful. I can go and purchase the Natural Defense Doctrine for 50 million gold to, get some more Patriot rating, but maybe it's better if I, go for some regional summit to get some neighbor relations if they're, down at that point. Everything affects everything else, and I feel like it does a very good job in terms of teaching the balance that you have to sort of have here. If you let one group just go off to their own, they're going to probably rise against you, and that's going to be a horrible time for you at this point. On the flip side, if you try to balance yourself way too much, then all of a sudden everyone's unhappy at that point. Now, you get 4 actions per turn, and actions have you do something. For example, maybe I want to lower the tax rate. And so if I lower the tax rate, or I'm going to increase it in this point because my taxes are actually rather low. 9% is not bad for this game. I think you start at around 14. But that will take an action. You can do 4 actions per turn, and then it ends with a random event. So, for example, the people are complaining about the high salaries and generous pensions being awarded to serving ministers while the government continues to cut public benefits. They see your government as corrupted, bloated, disconnected the challenges of the average person. So I have got 2 choices. I can cap the ministerial salaries and index pensions, or I can just basically ignore them. Well, I do think the ministers are earning a lot, so I'm going to do that. And their loyalty declined. They're like, hey, what the hell at this point? On the flip side, I'm getting a lot of people happy at this point in terms of the public. So I got to, again, balance that, because now if I look at my parliament, this guy is not happy. These guys are all right, but he's really not happy. And so I got to keep that in mind going forward. Maybe that wasn't the best of moves. Again, consequences for every action. Now, what's the weaknesses of this game? Well, as you've seen so far, there's not a lot you can do per turn, per se. Like, I can call people, I can look at information, but I feel like there are times where I can hit the end turn button right now. For example, everything's good, I've got the plus portion, I don't see anything that I really need to do at this point, so why bother? Sure, I can call and do more of this, talking to people and talking to the United States and things like that, but I feel like over time, it could just hurt me to force the issue. Again, like with calling, foreign representatives, if I say the wrong things and it doesn't give me choices, I've just wasted a turn at that point, or even made my situation worse. So it is a really weird balance there, and I feel like the game at times can be just very, very slow going at this point, even with the amount of options that you've got. Randomization in this game is good. Like, okay, our athletes are looking for additional funds. All right, I'll commit the funds. But I feel like the randomization element can also really screw you over at times, or really benefit you for no good reason. Sometimes a documentary will come up and be like, oh, these people are, being oppressed by Western civilization, and everyone's happy at that point. But on the flip side, you could have something like blow up that was really out of your hands, and you're of course that's going to happen in politics, but it feels like in a game with a simulation element to it, it really hurts it in the long run. Now, graphics wise, I'm gonna be frank, it looks ugly. Let's be frank, it is not the most graphically nice looking game. Granted, again, this isn't necessarily something that you need, especially in a simulator, but I feel like there are little things that the game could have done to make things nice. Like, if I'm gonna go read the newspaper, look how long it takes to get over there. Now, if I click right away, it will, go forward to that. But I feel like the animations needed to be an option in the menu to just, okay, can we just fast forward through this? Like, okay, I want to go and look at the Parliament and Cabinet. Automatically do that. Don't have me click to do it at this point. There's also too little info at times, and I want to really specifically talk about this guy, as I mentioned before. Now, it's funny, chicken is a leader of a country. Okay, you're going for a little bit of humor. But then watch this. All right, I want to talk to him about advancing human rights and freedoms in the region. I have no idea what that means. Brock, 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 brock. Obviously, he's had some reaction to it. And let's see if I end the call, and let's see if I, went up and down in terms of my relationship with him. I'm not exactly even sure. I think it went down. It's great to have humor in your game, but when it starts to affect gameplay like that, where you don't know what the actual benefit or, appropriate reaction to it was, it doesn't help. And I feel like it's just like, okay, great, you're funny, you got a chicken stand, you got a chicken leader, technically that's a rooster, so I'm not even sure why it's a chicken stand, but I feel like, you missed the mark in terms of the flow of your game. The game is slow. The game is very, very slow, and I feel like it's not a game that kept my attention to want to sort of finish it in terms of a scenario in question. In fact, not at all. Also, like Obama in the back there, just like, chilling, talking on the TV, because we're always watching Obama. But, yeah. Overall, Rogue State is all right. It's an okay simulator game. There are better ones out there, I feel. And while it does a good job in the context of what the game is going for, I feel like, one, I wouldn't have covered this game normally if I wasn't in the situation with Comcast that I was. But two, there's just not enough to really draw your attention over time. That over time, it just, it's just sort of meh. And unfortunately, in this day and age, meh is not necessarily good. Now, I will say, part of the reasons that I have problems with it is, again, it's not necessarily a subject matter that I'm the greatest interested in. So, for people who like geopolitical segments, I was trying to combine segments and elements into a word. That's fantastic, Sean. But if you were trying to go for a geopolitical kind of simulator game, I think the game does it nicely. I would pick it up at a reduced price, that's for sure, but it's not like the game is horribly flawed. It does have problems, but in the end, it's all right. All right, this is Dragnix signing out. Hopefully, I can get back up and running if, Comcast decides to get their heads out of their asses. I would really like to get back into, making video content for you guys, as opposed to, waiting to upload these and then hoping that I can, find something else to do for you guys, the newer releases. So, I will see you all later. Leave your comments in the video section below, and I will see you later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you'd missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.